years, she threatened to rival Marilyn Monroe.
Leave and walk out on all this publicity?
Jayne Mansfield, star of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter?
I'm Rockwell Hunter, Miss Marlowe.
Rockwell Hunter? His name sounds influential. His name only so happens to be Rockwell Hunter. What do you do?
I work for LaSalle Jr., Raskin, Cooley, and Crockett. The advertising agency?
Oh, those names, how crazy influential. He's a very big, influential advertising man. That's all he is. What do you do there?
I write TV commercials.
Oh, no. TV commercials? Oh, no, I couldn't go for a guy who did that. Could I?
Oh, yes, you could, Jayne. And with muscle man husband Mickey Hargitay alongside her, for a few brief years, anything seemed possible. Together, Jayne and Mickey were known as the Bust and the Biceps. As a screen partnership, they didn't challenge Tracy and Hepburn or Astaire and Rogers. But in a sword and sandal epic like the Italian-made Loves of Hercules, Mickey was more than a match for any stray bull which threatened Jay. Sadly, there was no happy final fade-out. Jayne Mansfield's life was to end in tragedy. Jayne Mansfield was born Vera Jane Palmer in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, on the 19th of April, 1933. When Jayne was 3, her father Herbert died of a heart attack at the wheel of his car. Little Jayne vowed that one day she would live in a pink palace. In 1939, her family moved to Dallas. At school, Jayne excelled at the violin. It was a talent she was to take to Hollywood. Even at the height of her fame, there was something childlike about Jayne's rapt concentration, the little girl still seeking the approval of her mother. The sadness of Jayne Mansfield was that in spite of being a wife and mother herself, she never really grew up. In Dallas, Jayne matured into a striking beauty. Shirley Temple had been her childhood heroine. Jayne's career was to follow a different trajectory. She was already married and the mother of a small daughter when in 1954 she and her first husband, Paul Mansfield, drove to Hollywood. Jayne was going to be a star. Jayne, Paul, and daughter Jane Marie drove to Tinseltown in a red Buick. Jayne thought it would show people they were going places. Paul thought that Jayne was growing lovelier by the day, but the marriage was doomed from the moment the couple hit Hollywood. In Hollywood, Jayne supported herself with modeling work and part-time jobs. Increasingly uneasy, Paul demanded she choose between him and her career. Jayne chose her career. Paul went back to Texas and divorce, and Jayne hijacked a press junket to publicize a 3D Jane Russell actioner underwater. She burst out of her swimming costume and onto the front pages of the movie magazines. Warner Brothers rushed in with a contract. Jayne had launched herself in Hollywood and set the pattern for a publicity-driven life and career. Working her way up the studio ladder proved more difficult. Jayne later explained the image problem she had with her handlers.
I did a soliloquy from Joan of Arc for Milton Lewis, who was the head of casting at Paramount Studios, in order to audition, and he just seemed to think that I was wasting my, as he said, obvious talents.
In these early days, agents and fast buck merchants swarmed around Jayne, but she retained, as she always would, a highly individual approach to marketing herself in the cutthroat world of California. After she was dropped by Warner's, she appeared in a 1956 independent with Lawrence Tierney, The Female Jungle. The marketing lacked nothing in subtlety.
Good evening, honey.
She's a man-crazy blonde.
By her, your lips, and you can be tender with your lips.
Jayne splashed happily in Hollywood's big pool. Her next movie was another independent, The Burglar, with Dan Duryea.
Name's Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. That's his name, Charlie.
Really? Tell me about it.
He likes me. He likes me very much.
Your boyfriend, Charlie. He's a cop.
Jayne enjoyed greater success in New York in a Broadway play, Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? She played a dumb, platinum blonde movie star. The play was later filmed by 20th Century Fox, with Jayne reprising her role. She was now the toast of New York. Over the next 2 years, Jayne's face and figure were to adorn 2,500 magazines and newspapers. In these heady months, she was to become the most photographed woman in the world. Her hourglass figure and clinging outfits chimed perfectly with the confidence and consumerism of 50s America. By now, there was another body beautiful in Jayne's life. Former Mr. Universe, Mickey Hargitay. A refugee from communist Hungary, Mickey was a mainstay of Mae West's legendary nightclub act. Jayne caught the act, and in the process, caught Mickey Hargitay. Mae went overboard. Jayne had told a journalist, "Somewhere, I hope there's a real prince for me." Mickey was that prince. Mae West was spitting mad, but love was in the air. Mickey divorced his wife Maria and accompanied Jayne on her second attempt to storm Hollywood. Jayne was now with Fox, who were no more pleased than Mae West to find Mickey Hargitay in tow. Their plans for Jayne did not include a Hungarian bodybuilder. Bizarrely, the studio heads wanted Jayne to marry a European princeling, just like Grace Kelly had. Jayne wanted Mickey. Pushing Jayne hard as the new Marilyn Monroe, Fox rushed her into a rock and roll exploitation movie, The Girl Can't Help It. Marilyn's co-star in The 7-Year Itch, Tom Ewell, was to partner Jayne, along with 2 notorious milk bottles.
Oh, I've been in men's bedrooms before.
Jayne had hit the big time. She was even allowed an ironic comment on her image.
But everyone figures me for a sex part. No one thinks I'm equipped for motherhood.
Edmund O'Brien offered a more cynical view.
You got 6 weeks to have her a star.
You know, the first thing, 6 weeks. Oh, easy, Fats, it takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
She ain't Rome. What we're talking about is already built.
Try as she might to shrug it off, Jayne was now a prisoner of her own image. Indeed, she was the jailer.
A very special young lady who came to Hollywood by way of UCLA. I'm sure she is easily recognized, at least here in her own community, although she would very easily travel anonymously just any place. Miss Jayne Mansfield.
At the 1958 Golden Globe Awards, Jayne stole the show, just as she had at the photo call for Underwater.
Now, down to business. Special award in recognition of his superb artistry, the beloved Peppy. He may be here, or he may not. In case he's not, we will be prepared to sort of stage other capabilities. Canteen floss.
Mickey Rooney is going to accept. wants to be tall.
In spite of the studio, Jayne wanted to be Mrs. Hargitay. Fox sent her to Europe, where she met Queen Elizabeth at a charity premiere for Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter. Jayne returned to Hollywood with her mind set on marriage. She and Mickey were married at the Wayfarers Chapel, Palos Verdes, in January 1958. It was meant to be a quiet wedding, but Jayne's mania for publicity, a potent combination of calculation and naivety, turned it into a three-ring circus. No matter, Jayne and Mickey were man and wife. Home for the young couple was to be found at 10100 Sunset Boulevard, a house once owned by Rudy Valley. It was to become known as the Pink Palace, after Jayne's favorite color, which dominated throughout. The heart-shaped swimming pool had been built by Mickey himself. And on the bottom, gold letters declared Mickey's love for Jayne. Mickey and Jayne took a nightclub act on the road. First stop, Las Vegas. Anything that Mae West could do, Jayne was determined to do better. She had come a long way from Dallas. She wasn't going to stop. Jayne sang and danced, surrounded by chorus boys. The routine recalled Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Jayne wiggled, waggled, and warbled. In the climax, Jayne was borne aloft to Mickey, who then whirled her around with his teeth. It brought the house down. Jayne and Mickey were living out a dream. She was on nodding terms with James Garner and Danny Thomas. She could schmooze with Kirk Douglas. Mickey clearly remained awestruck by such celebrity. But there was another side to Jayne, domestic and maternal. She was to have 3 children with Mickey. But her husband was worried about the direction Jayne's career was taking.
With her career, as she's pushing it too much, she didn't want it to stop. And I keep saying, honey, don't bother, don't, sit down, relax, choose your script.
Jayne felt,
I don't particularly enjoy publicity. It seems to follow me around all my life for some reason. Everything I do seems to make headlines. As far as being a dumb blonde is concerned, this certainly gave me my first chance into stage stardom first and movie stardom second.
but Jayne could act, as she showed in this teleplay with Brian Keith. No doubt about who's overacting here.
Are a true gentleman, Earl. Do you have to shout at me?
Yes, I do!
Trying to get through to you.
What do you want me to do, sit in a hotel room all day?
We've been over this time and time again. I've told you I don't care where you sit.
Just so long as Mike sits with me. Look, Earl, I've told you what happens when Mike's around. A nice boy smiles at me. Nothing wrong, just smiles and there's a riot.
Because I don't want nobody smiling at you.
Earl, that's the sweetest thing you've said to me since we came here.
Beneath all the froth and frills, there was an intelligent woman struggling to get out. The problem was Jayne's obsession with publicity. Any publicity. It often made her appear ludicrous. Jayne's musical ability was real enough, but paraded on the Ed Sullivan Show, it collided with the audience's expectation.
I never, ever think of myself as a sex symbol because I think of myself as just a girl. And if you can't laugh at yourself, then you may as well stop. If you ever stop taking yourself too seriously, then you may as well give up.
Occasionally, however, Jayne crossed the boundary between reality and fantasy. In February 1962, Jayne and Mickey disappeared in shark-infested waters after a boating accident off Nassau. They were eventually rescued from a coral reef. The press dismissed the affair as a publicity stunt for Jayne's latest movie, Panic Button. The fact was that Jayne had cut her already fragile moorings with reality. She and Mickey were in a downward spiral in which her early celebrity was being debased into notoriety. Jayne had made a Faustian pact with fame. Now the price had to be paid. In May 1962, Jayne summoned reporters to the Pink Palace. To Mickey's obvious bewilderment, she announced that the marriage was over due to irreconcilable differences. In the Pink Palace, the cracks were quickly papered over. Within 8 hours, the couple were back together again. The row had been over Mickey's refusal to allow the children to accompany their mother to Rome for Panic Button. In the end, the family flew off to Europe. Jayne, Mickey, the children, and their dogs. Harmony had been restored, but only temporarily. In Rome, Jayne was soon the object of attention from a horde of male admirers. Her progress down a shopping street became a news event. Newsmen were weary of this in America, but there was a ready market in Europe. Mickey took an uneasy back seat as Jayne stepped out with Panic Button producer Enrico Bomba. And in every nightclub, there was always some wise guy eager to catch a moment of reflected glory. At times, even Jayne seemed embarrassed. But she was trapped in the pitiless eye of the camera. The carousel whirled around ever faster, and she couldn't get off. By the time she appeared with Mickey in a roadshow production of Bus Stop, their marriage was in free fall. She married Bus Stop's director, Matt Kimber, in September 1964, in spite of the fact that she was still legally married to Mickey Hargitay. Later, there was a brawl between Mickey and Matt. Naturally, there was a photographer present. Mickey recalled,
"She confronted me. She looks at me in the eyes, and she said, 'I'm in love.'"
Hollywood turned its back on Jayne Mansfield. The photographers were now from provincial English newspapers covering Jayne's nightclub tour of the industrial Northeast. Jayne gamely ploughed on. She was still famous, but the glamour was chipped and flaking away. She was a long way from Las Vegas. Jayne went through the motions as if in a dream. The years were beginning to take their toll. In one of her last movies, Single Room Furnished, she played a streetwalker.
But you remember crying?
Billy, stop it. There's no room in my life for remembering. Each day's new, and the day past never existed. There are no days to come. It's gotta be that way. It is that way.
But with me?
Yes, with you or with anyone. That's the way it goes.
Jayne's last partner was Sam Brody, a lawyer in Hock to the Mob. She and Brody had frequent and violent public fights. Brody was afraid that one day he would kill Jayne. But the end would not come this way. In the small hours of the 29th of June, 1967, Jayne, Brody, and a driver were traveling on Louisiana's Highway 90, 30 miles from New Orleans. Her 3 children by Mickey Hargitay were in the back. Disoriented by a cloud of mosquito spray, the driver slammed straight into the back of a truck. The 3 adults died instantly. The children survived. Contrary to the grisly legend, Jayne was not decapitated in the accident. Mickey Hargitay saw her body at the morgue.
I saw her the last time. It wasn't really her anymore. You know, soul was gone, spirit was gone. It was just a machine. It wasn't her.
Mickey took charge of the funeral arrangements. Jayne was buried in Pennsylvania. But her spirit stayed in the Pink Palace. In the immediate aftermath of Jayne's death, Mickey returned to the scenes of the Pink Palace. To the heart-shaped pool, built with his own hands and dedicated to Jayne. Round every corner were memories. The magazine covers of Jayne's heyday. The days when her star shone briefly over Hollywood. The master bedroom, a riot of pink. If life had imitated art, Jayne and Mickey would have lived happily ever after. Clinch and final fade out.